A big thank you goes out to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. Hello everybody, I hope you're all doing really well. All right, this morning I decided to come out and attempt to take some photographs, but I'm really at a bit of a loss of where to go today. The weather is just, well, it's been like this for quite some time now. It's just not very inspiring. It's that kind of time of year, you know, where it's kind of gloomy. I mean, I have been out a couple of times where we've had good light and I've been lucky that way. But as far as inspiration goes, it's difficult. And I'm sure a lot of you face the same thing. But I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. So I've decided to challenge myself and come out to Cathedral Grove, which is an old growth forest, or what's left of an old growth forest on the east coast of Vancouver Island. So I have done a video here before, and I'll leave a link to that here. I've been here, I don't know how many times, and I have come away with one or two decent shots, but it is extremely difficult to photograph. One of the main reasons being is that it's a very popular park. In the summer, it's just absolutely packed with people. And the reason being is that there's a main highway that goes through here up to a town on the west coast called Tofino and Ucluelet. There's two towns, very popular surfing area, a place where lots of people go for their holidays. So this is kind of a stop on the way. And over the years, Cathedral Grove has gone through a lot of changes, not so great changes in a lot of cases. A lot of the big trees have fallen down from major windstorms. So it is a challenge because there's a lot of logs that have been cut by hand. It just doesn't look natural at all. And of course, where I'm standing here, there's quite a bit of erosion from people walking around and so on. This tree here, this is a western red cedar. It's actually hollowed out. Now it looks like it was from a fire at some point. There's a number of trees here that are quite rotten inside, mostly cedars. But I'm going to look around. I'm determined to find something. The light is not great. It's very overcast and it's kind of drizzling. But I think I'll find something. I will find something. It might not be a portfolio image, but I'm determined to find at least one image today. That's my goal. All right. Okay, hopefully you can all see this, but this is the type of things that I would look for in a forest photography situation. Now, I have said that the light is not great, and that's true, and it is quite flat, but there is still ambient light if you look for it. Now, right behind me here is Cameron Lake. So the woodland kind of ends right on the edge of the lake here. So what I'm looking for is ambient light coming from that clearing. So if you look behind me here, you'll notice straight away that right here, this tree here, has quite a bit more light on it than, say, these foreground trees or even the background trees. So there you have a really nice contrast between light and dark. Now, it's not blazingly obvious, but that is something that you can work on in post-processing. You can lighten that area as much as you want to the point where, you know, it's almost overexposed if you want. And I do that quite often. I'll bring it right to the brink. And then these darker trees, or the ones that don't have as much light in the foreground, those I'll darken significantly to add that contrast between the lights and the darks. Now, unfortunately, I really don't like the path in this in this setting, it's quite nice because you kind of hip hop from tree to tree, but then you have this bright tree kind of on the right side there. And in actual fact, why don't I take a photograph of it anyway, and I'll kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about with the post-processing. In my last video from Carmana, I did that a lot. I would take an area or a tree that had, you know, quite a bit of light on it, but then I'd really brighten that section to draw your attention to it, and then darken the rest of the scene. So I'll do that here. Like I said, I'm not terribly happy with the path, but I do like the light on that tree. So that tree there. Right, let's give that a go and see how we make out with it. All right, I think you can all see this here. So what I'm going to do is, as far as focusing goes, I'm going to focus right on the main subject, which is this tree here with the light on it. And you can see it really does stand out. As I said before, even though the day is a gloomy one and the light is flat, there is still ambient light. You just have to look for it. I found the best places like little clearings next to woodland or trees, or perhaps you'll get a tree that is in a clearing on its own, surrounded by a denser forest, just stuff like that. And what I'll do is, as soon as I get back, when I process this, I'll just darken the edges considerably and just lighten the middle tree there as much as I can. As I said, this isn't going to be a fantastic image, but I just wanted to kind of demonstrate the types of things that I look for when it comes to light. I've also put on a polarizer to try and get rid of some of the glare that's coming off the ferns at the bottom here, and also at the top here. Now what I'll do, so I'll just take a photograph here. So let's put this at f16. And I'm just going to take a quick shot here. And we're just going to zoom in on the foreground to see if that's sharp enough, because I suspect that it might be a bit out. So as you can see, the tree is super sharp, which is great. The foreground, actually it's not too bad. It's out a little bit, just a little bit. So what I could do, if I wanted to, I could probably focus stack, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do here, just going to focus down just in front of the tree there, maybe there. Let's see how that does. Someone asked me in the comments in the last video whether I manually focus or use autofocus. I use autofocus. It tends to work quite well with this camera. I've set it up so that I have this button here to do the focusing for me, so that I'm not pressing down on the shutter button, because having the focus on the shutter button is a real pain, because every time you go to press the shutter to take an image, then of course it starts to focus, and the focus point might not be where you want it at that time. I do have a remote for this, but it's attached to my phone, so I just use the 2-second timer for now. If I'm standing away from the camera, then I'll use my phone as a remote. So let's just have a look at that. I'm just blown away by the raw files from this camera. What you're seeing now is just a rendition, but the raw files are very close to what you see on the back of the camera. So I'm very impressed with this camera when it comes to the raw files. I love the saturation and the sharpness. Actually, in a lot of cases, I end up bringing the sharpness down because I find them too sharp. Now, you will notice that there's some bright areas in here that are a little bit distracting, but of course we can get rid of those in post-processing. But I think you get a good idea of what I'm talking about. When you have a little bit of light and dark and a contrast, and that contrast, that's what gives you depth in your photograph. And that's usually, not all the time, but usually what you're looking for in your images. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. If you're in the market for a professional looking website, then look no further. Squarespace has some of the classiest website designs that I've come across. A Squarespace website is easy to set up and intuitive to use. Squarespace's all-in-one platform is an exceptional choice for photographers wanting to showcase their masterpieces to the world and also sell their services and products. Want a free trial? Head over to squarespace.com and give it a go. And if you like it, use the code AdamGibbs for 10% off your first purchase. That's right. Go to squarespace.com, AdamGibbs, for 10% off your first purchase. All right, I think I might have found another composition right next to the road actually. And it's funny, I took an image in this spot a couple of years ago. I'll leave a link to the video if you haven't seen it. It's a pano of some fallen logs. Well, these are the same fallen logs, except I've hopped over one log. So totally different composition, just same area. I kind of like this because it tells a little bit of a story, and it's funny because in a couple of weeks, Nick and I are doing Nick Page and I are doing a talk at the Outsiders Conference about composition and trying to tell a story with your images. And it's funny because I don't usually set out to try and tell any kind of story. I just look for composition and light. If there happens to be a story there, great, but it's not my prime objective. But in this case, I think this scene does tell a really good story. We have these massive trees that have fallen down, and one's kind of slammed on top of the other one and broken in half, and then they're surrounded by new growth and greenery. So I really like that, and I kind of like the angles on this as well. It looks like the sun's trying to come out. I don't want too much light, but the light has actually improved since I've got here. I've really lucked out lately with the woodland light, because in the morning, as soon as I set out, it's usually quite gloomy and I'm not terribly inspired. And then once I take a couple of images, I start to really get into it. And that's kind of the case with this. It is a little bit busy, but there are some dominant logs that just kind of intertwine with one another. So I'm using a relatively wide lens on the GFX 50R. And I don't know, we'll see what we can get away with here. One thing I should mention here, this is a prime example of why a nice tall tripod is really good to have. In the past, I would have just tried to balance the tripod on this log, which is really precarious. But now I can put the legs down on the floor and stand on the log and still have enough height that I'm not stooped down like this all the time. So this is a great example. So if I just quickly take this here, I've got the legs fully extended, and you can see that it's still at a reasonably good height for me. Now I do need to get a little bit higher, so what I'll end up doing is bringing this up here and then balancing the leg on this log over here. So maybe bring it down a little bit. And also, you know, if you happen to have spikes, this is where spikes come in really handy. I do have spikes for this tripod, but I just haven't put them on. So, but it's just something like that. So we have lots of height still, and I'm able to look down rather than up. Again, the reason why I like that is because I don't want to be looking up at the sky. I want to be looking either down or straight across. Okay, so this is kind of the idea that I have. I am using a polarizer as well, just to get rid of some of that little glare off the shiny logs here. I don't know if you can see that. As I turn this, you can kind of see that this area is getting quite bright without the polarization. And as I turn this, you can see that it just saturates the colors a little bit more. Anyway, that's kind of what I have. I'm going to probably take a few variations of this, and I might do a pano as well, because if I go over to here, there's a tree over here that I could use as the end frame, plus the logs continue. There's a couple of fallen logs here, and then if I go around, there's a couple of really large trees right here as well. So that might make a kind of a neat pano. We'll see. Morning everybody, look at this. So I've come up to Little Mountain again, which is just down the road from where I live. And last time I was here I noticed that the sun was coming up from the end of the mountain. So I figured I'd come back for a quick trip to see what was happening up here. And look, we've got a little bit of fog up here and the sun is rising. I got here a little bit late, so I'm rushing around trying to get shots, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. So you'll have to excuse me while I run around. I don't know if this composition's any good, but I just love the light. It's just beautiful. So I've got these shots. I'm going to run down to the end of the cliff here, not off the cliff, and see if I can find something down there, because we have these beams of light coming in because of the sun and the mist coming in. Yeah, I should have got here maybe 10-15 minutes earlier, but yeah, this is beautiful. Alright, I really didn't give myself enough time, so I took a quick shot over here, and I'm taking a shot here. What I really like about this scene is the arbutus tree at the edge of the cliff, right where the light starts, and I really love this this log in the foreground. But the image looks, or the scene looks a bit off balance to me, because there's a lot of trees on the left side and not so many on the right side. But the light is fading really fast, so I have to take some shots really quickly. But at least now, because it's close by, I can come back at any time. So, but you know, I'm not sure how often these conditions actually happen. I think quite often. They weren't predicting fog this morning. It's just in this end patch here where we're getting it. Probably because the sun's warming up the damp air down below and causing this mist. It's very localized. So if I walk down the trail here, there isn't any mist at all. So I keep maneuvering around. I can show you what I have, and hopefully it'll look pretty good.
Alright, so as you can see, the light is absolutely beautiful. It's not quite as warm as it was, say, 15 minutes ago, but it's still pretty good. The one part that's confusing me a little bit are these trees here. I'm trying to arrange them so that they're not overlapping too much. And if they are, then I'll try and hide them behind some of the main or the dominant trees in the foreground. You'll see there's quite a few trees on the left here, but not so many on the right. Not really quite sure what to do. This is kind of the tree that I really love, this one way in the background there. It is somewhat hidden by a branch coming down, but it has such a beautiful shape to it. If I go in close to it and just take a photograph of the tree, I could do that, but then it's just a tree. It doesn't really have any context to it. So I just love this kind of looking through the dark forest into the light. Anyway, that's what I have. Hopefully it'll work out. That's what happens when you don't get to a spot quick enough. I guess I should have got a bit earlier. Oh well, at least I'm here now.
just goes to show that with some persistence and an awful lot of luck, I do get some good light just now and then. All right, everybody, thanks ever so much for watching this week's video. I really hope that you're able to get out and do some of your own shooting, regardless of the apocalyptic virus that's going around right now. So stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully I'll have a video out for you next week. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. And as always, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell if you enjoy the content of my channel. Okay, bye for now.